Starscream moaned and rubbed his face, trying to bring his optics online properly. His processors felt muzzy and dull. There was an ache all through his back and shoulders. He definitely did not feel well. That thought brought the sharp fear back into focus, and he instantly began to shift some spades. Foreign contaminant detected. Filtered at 86%. Continue filtration? Starscream consented and continued to watch the results in his internal HUD. HUD. Processor functions restored at 90%. Well, that wasn't the best, but he at least knew he was clear-headed enough to think. Motor functions restored at 74%. That did not please him. If he needed to fight, he would need to be in top condition. Starscream sighed and massaged his fingertips in slow circles beside his optics. Energon levels, 67%. A bit low, but still expected given the length of time since he last refueled and the fact his systems were fighting a toxin. Transformation systems, error. Starscream's fingers paused. What? Flight systems, error. Error? Sensor net, 23% activated. Reboot sensor net. He sent the confirm command and opened his optics. Reboot, failure. Retrying. Starscream's mouth opened in horror as he stared at his ceiling. Reboot, failure. Retrying. Impossible, he gasped. But a vast twist of his neck, right and then left, pulled a whimper from his lips. He looked back at the ceiling. Reboot successful. Initializing sensor net. His head rocked back and forth in denial, optics blown wide, nearly white. A static and feedback-laced scream tore from Starscream's vocalizer, high and piercingly loud. So, his normal voice. Or even higher, louder, in which case we all just lost our eardrums. He didn't even feel the pain as the sensor net activated. Skywarp teleported himself and Thundercracker directly into the room. One of the coneheads overrode the lock and they shoved in as well. All the Seekers had heard. Everyone had heard. Starscream was broadcasting on every channel Decepticon's had. Oh, God! Skywarp cried as he stared at Starscream. Thundercracker followed his commander-stricken gaze up and tipped backwards, pulling Skywarp with him. His tanks roiled and he felt the compulsion to purge them. Warp us out of here, Sky, he whispered, unable to tear his optics off the gruesome sight above them. The hysterical screams continued and Thundercracker shook his trimate. Get us out of here, Sky! He ripped his wings off, Skywarp whimpered, pressing back into Thundercracker, his own wings vibrating. He was shaking so hard. There's nothing but nubs left. Oh, Jesus. Thundercracker clicked in distress, realizing Skywarp was still watching Starscream. The ceiling, Sky. He nails Screamer's wings to the ceiling. Skywarp's head tipped back as he looked up, and Thundercracker was forced to support the other Seeker's weight as his knees gave. Primus! Sky, teleport us out of here! But, Starscream, Sky! Thundercracker had never been more grateful to feel the twisting vertigo of teleportation. He kept his arms wrapped tighter on Skywarp's waist, and buried his face against the gray shoulder vent, offlining his comm channels. He was jerked off balance as Skywarp lurched away, purging his tanks on the floor. Thundercracker knelt and pulled his trimate out of the way of the cleaning drone. They curled together, wings tight to their bodies, and pressed to the far corner of their quarters. The Constructicons can fix him, Skywarp said suddenly, though his tone held doubt. Thundercracker tried to bring his respiration under control. They'll fix his wings, but he wasn't sure at all that Starscream's mind would ever be repaired. Despite the thick bulkheads and having no communications, he could still hear the Air Commander screaming descent to madness echoing in his head. Thundercracker tucked his face to Skywarp's neck. I think there's this, accepted theory in fandom that Seekers put a lot of pride into their wings, and when they're damaged or if they for some reason can't fly, they suddenly go insane. So having them ripped off and seeing them nailed to the ceiling, imagine if you woke up without your legs and you looked up and saw them nailed to the ceiling. Not imagine worse than that. That's probably what he's going through, I think, if that helps. Jesus Christ. Okay. Desist your ridiculous pacing, Megatron snapped from his throat. Soundwave spun to face his leader. Please just let me send my creations to the surface, he begged, forgoing his usual vocal filter in desperation. Absolutely not. They're sparklings. They're over 55 Vorn old. Soundwave wrung his hands and began pacing and shaking his head, arguing. Only Ravage. We were in stasis for over 48 of those 45 Vorn. They are sparklings, Megatron glared. I will not authorize raising the tower and allowing that fool Autobot to escape. I think him escaping is the best thing that could happen right now. A soft cry of desperation left Soundwave, and he moved fast, dropping the nail at Megatron's feet, hands clutching the tyrant's knees. His visor and mask retracted, and he stared up, laid bare on his knee to beg just this one favor from the master he'd served faithfully for so long. I'm next! Please, I'll stay here. I'll do anything you want, but please, just let me send the sparklings up to safety. I'm next! The backhanded blow from his face lifted and spun Soundwave. He lay limply on his back, arms and legs splayed, and stared in sightless shock at the wall. It hurt. His gyros spun, his right cheek throbbed in time to the pulse of the energon through his lines, and he felt betrayed. Megatron had never hit him before. His visor's mask slid back into place, hiding his face with tears of hopelessness threatened. "Get your cowardly chasers out of my sight!" Soundwave slowly rolled his head to face his commander, then rose. He trudged through the corridors to his quarters. It took longer than it should have as he listened and searched, both visually and telepathically, for threats. Soundwave keyed in his entry code and slipped quickly into his room. He would disobey. He would get his creations out. He would. He gasped and stumbled back against the door. There on the wall over his recharger berth were precisely etched glyphs in perfect Cybertronian calligraphy. Even had Soundwave not known the identity of their tormentor, he'd have recognized the elegant script of a classically educated Tower's mech. I don't know how many of you know this, and you probably could have guessed it from the fake, but it said on Wiki that Mirage is an upper class, not twit, but an upper class person. He's rich and well learned, well read, and all that. So that's what all the taunts really are about. This is getting really good. Anyway, here's what the message said. Lock the sparklings in here and come alone to sublevel 3, hatch 5, and they will not be harmed. You have one bream to say your goodbyes and comply. The mask and visor were retracted again, and Soundwave's hand trembled over the laser-carved words. Say his goodbyes. Sobs escaped and he turned, sitting on the berth thing, leaning against the wall under those agonizing words. There was no doubt that he would do as told. Soundwave cried into his hands for a moment before forcing himself to calm. I have never seen Soundwave portrayed this way. He had been blocking everything from his creations for days now. They knew the basics, but had not allowed them to hear Starscream's mad and hysterical screams yesterday, or see Vortex's mangled body. Decepticons. Eject. One glance at the message and then his face, and Soundwave's creations were shifting their bipedal forms, crowding into his arms and crying too. You can't! Ratbat sobbed. You can't! Even Ravage had tears rolling down his face as he shook his head in denial. I surrender, or he will take all of you down with me. Soundwave held them tight, murmuring for them to escape the base as soon as they could. Megatron be damned. He whispered his love, telling them to stay together and stay out of the Autobots' way. They wouldn't be hurt. His chrono signaled he only had a click left. Soundwave kissed each of his sparklings. The single focused pulse of psychic power drove them all into forced recharge. He laid them together on the berth, cradling Ratbat close just a moment longer. Tallpath stared at his creations as the chrono chimed his half-click warning. I guess Ratbat would be the youngest. That's why. He left the room and scrambled the locking code from the outside. Soundwave knew it would not hold them long, especially after Frenzy woke, but it would do. He glanced around the hall, not sure what to expect, but could see and sense nothing. Sublevel 3, hatch 5, was as silent as a tomb when he arrived. A fitting thing, Soundwave thought, given why he was here. The hatch itself looked untouched. Ridges and rivets allowed a fine coating of dust, proof no one had been down here, let alone opened the hatch, since the crash. He was trembling harder now as his hands came to cover up all his face but his optics. Soundwave felt even more vulnerable without the mask. His thoughts and emotions so easily read, but the mask and visor served to help him control the intensity of his telepathy. Without them in the way, he stretched, searching the dim corridor. Searching the dim corridor with his optics, audios, and his mind. He turned a slow circle, terror only increasing as a heavy silence that was only broken by the hitch gasp of his intakes. Please, he whispered, not bothering to brush away the tears escaping his optics. Please, I'm here. You promised. Please. But there was nothing. Nothing! Soundwave whimpered as a brain passed, then another. He dared not leave to check on his creations. If he left, their lives would be forfeit. And if he had been tricked, another soft sob echoed in the dim. There was nothing he could do now. He knew it was cowardly, but he would rather deactivate with the hope, the illusion, his sparklings lived. Please. Soundwave whispered again. Boo. Soundwave jerked his head to the left and felt a sharp stab of pain in the main energon line on the right side of his neck. The injection pushed cold through his lines, optics blaring as he dropped to his knees. One hand braced him up, the other clamped weakly over the fading sting. Soundwave gasped, please, in his left audio. How many, I wonder, have begged you, in his right audio, and how many did you actually grant mercy? None. Soundwave answered silently, none. And then the darkness took him.